We hit the $1 million mark without any paid ads.
That's David Hall, an applied psychologist and the founder of Psych Maven. David's got one of the top performing schools on Teachable, and they've generated over $1 million in revenue. And he did it all without having his own audience, proving you don't have to be a social media influencer in order to sell a lot of courses. In this episode, you'll learn how to build $1 million course business without social media.
I don't like social media. It just got gross. And when I got into the online course space, it just wasn't a place I wanted to try to figure out.
The follow the money strategy that finds your best affiliates.
Who's spending money to advertise to someone like me? What is it just to kind of draft behind them, to kind of follow behind them? Because they're already spending the money. I'm not telling them to spend money. They're already doing it.
And why he gives away 50% of his revenue.
I'm happy to give half of my revenue for even what's a large course, because...
So I touched on it briefly. Could you explain to everybody, who do you help with your courses and what kind of problem are you solving for them?
So in the United States, if you are a licensed mental health provider of any sort, and this is true for the most licensed professions in the US, there's a requirement to get continuing education. And what's complicated is it's different in different states in the US. And so people ask me like, well, what's the requirement of it? And the answer is, depends which state you live in. But usually you have to get a certain amount of credentialing to be able to offer it. And so I've done that for years. I got into that business in, as you said in the intro, in 2012, in a live seminar business, just because I enjoyed teaching. I don't enjoy being a professor. I've done it a little bit, but I don't like grading papers. I don't like the bureaucracy. And I had some people that were in my life professionally that were doing that sort of work. And I could see that they had income flexibility and they could travel and all this sort of stuff. And so I got into that. And so the problem was just more of, this is something that everyone has to do. And I will say it's nice being in a course business where people have to do it. They don't have to do mine, is what I say, but they have to do somebody's. And I'm also in an industry where the quality, and I think most people in my field would say this, the quality of options is typically fairly poor. And so I was just trying to do something interesting. And so that was kind of my initial foray. But the way I have expanded is I also teach people in the mental health space different business practices or career opportunities. And it's really just kind of building off this audience I already had. And I would get the questions about, well, how did you get into the seminar business? And I've done other things like started medical practices or group psychotherapy practices. And so that would just bring up natural questions. And so I began teaching about that too. So the way I describe what we do is we offer approved continuing education from a variety of teachers and provide career and business development resources for those who work in the behavioral health space. And so I help people that are therapists or therapist adjacent. There are a decent amount of coaches, consultants that will kind of come in as well in the orbit.
Nice. Now, I mentioned in the intro, you don't have an audience on social media. And when I was researching you, when we first were messaging, I was like, I can't find much here on YouTube or Instagram or certainly not on TikTok, whatever. And I messaged you and I was like, did I miss it? Am I looking under the wrong thing? You're like, no, that's not my jam. And I was like, oh, this is going to be an interesting podcast because nearly everybody who we have as clients, nearly everybody who I talk to who's a podcast listener, that's how they build an audience on social media, generally YouTube, sometimes Instagram, sometimes TikTok, sometimes SEO, whatever, sometimes podcast. And then from there, they build an email list and from there, they make sales. But you're not doing it that way. So can you explain, how does that work? What is it that you are doing?
Happy to.
If you want to grow your email list quickly, you got to check out our Double Your Email List guide. Having a bigger email list makes everything else in your business easier. It means that every time you do a promotion, you make more sales, you make more revenue, you help more people. With this guide, you'll get a step-by-step process to everything that you need to do to grow your email list. If you follow it, you will very quickly experience a boost in your lead magnet conversion rates and you will see more people joining your email list. We typically see an increase in new subscribers each month of between 2 and 10x. So grab your copy of the Double Your Email List guide now at datadrivenmarketing.co/guide and watch your email list transform. That is datadrivenmarketing.co/guide, or click the link in the show notes, the pinned comment, or the description below.
I've been in the online teaching business only since 2019, which I realize a lot of people are more recent than that, but to me that doesn't feel like that long. And before then, though, as I said, I was had an in-person seminar business. And so some of it, I got started before like social media advertising was much of a thing for a lot of stuff. And an in-person thing, you wouldn't market quite in the same way because you were just trying to get people very locally. And not that you can't do it like that. I know some of your story, John, of how you got into, fitness program sorts of things. And that was all very local, but I hadn't heard your story then. So I just went off what I knew. And so I used to advertise for seminars by mailing postcards. I would get, they don't exist much anymore, but there'd be list brokers where people, you'd say like, I want a list of, or I guess they do exist. They're just not very good. But, I could get a list of this many mailing addresses for mental health professionals. And what's great about my niche is it's a very identifiable group. Their names are on registries in state. They're searchable. I can look up who are the licensed mental health therapists in an area. And so I just do that. And when I started, I would get anywhere between like 0.9 to 2.2% return. And particularly it was near break even if I was doing like a little under the 1%. But if I could get anything over 2%, that was great. And so that's just what I did. And when I moved online, I didn't really have even my mindset, a mechanism of what that looked like. And on top of that, I've not been a full-time course creator ever. I've always had other jobs. Like I work as a private practice psychotherapist. I've run a group practice. And so it was always something I did on the side. And I'm honestly just not that organized for certain things. And I'm also I don't like social media. I used to like Facebook when it was in my days was enjoyable because no one treated it as a marketing platform, and it was just the way I reconnected with college friends. And then it just got gross. And when I got into the online course space, 2019 is when I started, but really kind of built up steam in 2020. And 2020 was a super gross time to be online. It felt like to me, like it was just and so like, it just wasn't a place I wanted to try to figure out. And so since it wasn't natural to me, since it wasn't part of my history, I didn't think about it very much. And I was able to build momentum in other ways. And then just became like, I don't want to add one more thing. And I would see friends that would do it, and more power to them. I'm always like, do what you like. But when I see friends that they're doing these, shorts or reels 5 times a day, and I just look at that like that just looks exhausting to me. And so I could build momentum. And so I just didn't do it. And so that's why. And I told John, I try to keep my LinkedIn update. That's kind of the last place online that I feel like isn't super gross. And I'm working with some people now, and we're starting to do meta ads for the first time. Like I've not ever done paid ads until this year. We hit the $1 million mark without any paid ads. And so I'm not against it. I just don't want to be the one running it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how does it work? So when you were doing it in person, you were doing direct mail. And you mentioned some conversion rates, and I know nobody here is probably doing direct mail, but I'm fascinated, so I'm going to ask you about it.
Yeah.
So it was a 0.9 to 2.2% conversion rate from what to what? From sending these out to people to signing up for the seminar?
Because I probably could have mined my analytics better. Of like how many people were hitting the website. I would look at it, but that was mostly so I could tell like when the mailings were landing, because I hit a spike on the registration page. I had the most ugly website I built on Intuit because it was one of the first like DIY web builders, and I did it for years. And in a conversation, I was saying to my wife, or I was saying in earshot to my wife to somebody else, I'm like, yeah, I built the website myself and it doesn't look that bad. And my wife's like, it was functional. And anyway, but so I could have mined those analytics a bit more, but I didn't. So that was from the mailing. So how I typically do is, let's say I would do an event in Atlanta, Georgia. And so what I would do is I would make decisions on who I would want to mail to. And I try to be as strategic as possible. So I'd say like, okay, I would want 5,000 pieces of mail to go out. And I would sort it based on, because there are different licenses in the mental health professions in the U.S. There's psychologists as a license, health counselors a license, marriage and family therapists as a license. And I would pick a mixture of the two based on what I thought was going to be most advantageous to what I was presenting on. And I would try to do exclusions, like if no more than 2 pieces of mail to the same address, because a lot of the addresses would be people's practices. And so there might be 12 people at a single address. And so to get more reach, and I would said like no greater than like a 50-mile radius. And so I try to kind of work that some. And I would do postcards. And I like that because there was nothing to open. I would get things that would be like trifolds, but there was an action in it. And so I would just be it was a high gloss, nicer postcard. And if I was doing it now, I'd put a QR code on it, but that wasn't a thing then. So it's just like, here's the link, just trying to get to the landing page. And I did it competitively priced. I did a little bit under what was kind of industry standard. And what's nice about my field is that it's about courses for CEs are about like, how many hours is it? That's kind of how you think about the value unit. It's like, it's 5 hours, it's 6 hours. And there's a general, it's like $15 to about $50 is the range right now. And
Per
so
hour or
per hour.
right?
No, not per course. But if you get under 15, people will sell things for really cheap. When I'm advising people, I really encourage them not to do it too cheap, because I'm like, I don't trust a cheap bottle of wine, is what I say. Like, it may be great, but if it's too cheap, I'm suspicious. And so you don't want to do that to yourself. And so I did just slightly under kind of the medium rate. And no, but it'd be, that range for people, just how many pieces of mail went out. So my cost for doing the postcards was about, at the time, 50 cents a piece. That's postage, printing, kind of all that. And so if I spent $2,500, that would give me 5,000 pieces of mail. And the conversion rate would be based off that 5,000 number.
Got it. So you were making somewhere between 4,500 and whatever that is, 12,000.
Yeah, minus expenses. And that's the other thing too about online courses that is so much better. Like, it was a venture. And I lost money in in-person events, because there would be what I would spend in the mailing, and then I would have whatever travel, and then it was usually me renting out like overly air-conditioned hotel conference room spaces. I since advise people to do it differently now. There are much cheaper ways to do that I just hadn't thought of yet, of public libraries, lodge halls, churches. There are all these places that you can get much cheaper. So I would have typically a few $1,000s in expenses, and that's really bootstrapping. And so it'd be minus expenses, but if you have, an event would be the equivalent of a launch. And if, you would really, suffer if you put too much out, and because it's just like the expense was there. I guess that can happen in people's launches too, if you spend much on your advertising budget and all that. But it would be, and so it was a significant part of my income for years, but it was still stuck in this. I had to teach the thing. How much I could charge for something was based on how long it was, and how long it was. It's like so I would typically do day-long events, which would be like 6 hours. And so I was kind of at that $100 to $150 price point for my offerings, because that was just kind of market. And it could be a fantastic training, but I wasn't necessarily going to get more than that. What's been cool though in my field is, since COVID, in-person trainings have gotten a lot more premium pricing. And so you can get away now, even in my field, of charging more for in-person, because since online is so much easier, a lot more people do it. But so you're really making a decision like, I know I want that high touch experience sort of thing. So I do a lot fewer in-person now, but I can charge a lot more for them.
Okay. So you were running these direct mail campaigns, and you switched over to online, but you didn't start doing work on social media. So what did you do? Were you still doing direct mail to promote your online courses, or were you doing...
that would have been... So what got me on the space was, I was meeting with someone who's been about a bit of a mentor to me. His name's Bill O'Hanlon. And in the psychotherapy world, like, he's a decently famous person. Like, he's the most famous psychotherapist I know. And he's at this point, he has over 40 books published. He was on Oprah in 2000. Like, one of his books was like book of the month or something like that. And he's the one that inspired me to get into the seminar business initially, because we hadn't met. I just read an article in Trade magazine that had come out, and it was called My Indiana Jones Life as an Entrepreneurial Therapist. And he had read Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Work Week and got inspired. And he had been in the life seminar business for years and was making money at that. And then he was starting to do, at the time, what he was calling teleseminars. I think the online course word hadn't solidified yet. This was like 2009. And I think he was selling them as like downloadable assets on like eJunkie. I mean, I don't think it was a learning management system yet. And so years ago, that's what kind of inspired me. And I got into the seminar business. We got to know each other. I actually hired him to do events for my company. And then I got involved with some other startups. And so I between 2015, 2018, I wasn't really doing very much in the seminar business. It existed, but like, it wasn't my focus. And 2018 kind of come back up, re-engage in that. And I connect with Bill. And at that point, Bill had some courses he was hosting on Kajabi. And he was telling me, he's like, you got to put it online. This is what you got to do. check this out. And I had no clue about online course world. I didn't know about any of these systems. Like I had this idea to put things online, but I was thinking like what he was doing before of like people go to some online digital download sort of place and like I didn't think about the process. And so that introduced me to that world. And like a lot of people when they first discover it, it feels like I could just make money in my sleep and it's going to be easy. And just like I've been schlepping around the world like or you have to do these in-person things like this will be so much easier, easy button. Well, no. So 2019, I began putting my first things online. And I think that first year I was on, I think I made $5,000 in sales. But it wasn't that I had a group psychotherapy practice that was taking a lot of my energy at the time that was doing well. I was honestly doing it as a hobby. Well, then COVID hit the next year. And so I had a lot more time on my hands at home. And there were a lot of people looking for online learning experiences. And I know a lot of folks got into that. Their businesses really grew then. Mine certainly did. And I will say, I'm ashamed of how, having been in a seminar business for so many years, how poor my email list was because I didn't really keep track of people's emails that well. It wasn't my means of communication. So I think I started 2020 with like 400 people on MailChimp. And it was a decently cold list. And I thought, okay, I've got to figure this out. So I did do social media, I will say at the beginning, but in a different sort of way. I started a fake account, not fake in the sense of like, it was still me, but it was only for business purposes. And I went and found every private group that I could find in the mental health profession in the United States. A lot of them were like local. And so it would be like Atlanta area mental health therapist or child focused therapist of Dallas or things like that. And a lot of these moderators have gotten pretty tight on this these days, but I would just reach out, just say, hey, I provide continuing education for therapists. They would often ask the question of like, are you in the Dallas area? Are you in the Tampa area? And my response was always, I'm not currently in the Tampa area, but I provide continuing education for Florida-based therapists. And because it implied that I could come there at some point, it just kind of left that open. And so I joined all of these groups and I put out a free mini course. It was on it, but it came with accredited hours. And so as a lead magnet, and I've since done that a lot over the years, it's a really sticky lead magnet. And I would always ask permission from the like, hey, this is a free thing. And so that was just kind of my guerrilla process to try to get leads out. So it was social media driven, but it wasn't me posting my own I was going on to other people's places and just posting this lead magnet. And I probably got my initial 1,500 people on the list then. But what really blew it up was going back to my friend Bill O'Hanlon, who I talked about. So he had since mostly retired. Bill's in his early 70s and he had mostly retired from the teaching space and was actually working as a songwriter in Nashville. But all of a sudden, COVID hits and his investment portfolio for his retirement took a hit initially and he's a little panicked and he offered to do an affiliate support for me in one of my courses. And he had about a 40,000 person email list that he had built up over the course of his speaking career. And my first big launch was him doing affiliate support for me in this thing. And then after that, I asked him because he had these Kajabi courses, but he wasn't doing anything with them. Like they were just kind of living on there because he wasn't really focused on that anymore. And I asked him, I said, Bill, you've got these other courses that you've created. And he probably had 3 or 4 existing at the time of some key teachings for him. I'm like, would you let me, I'm happy to host them for you. And he said, yeah, I'm happy to do that. And so we've done that for years. And so I initially was able to build up an audience by borrowing somebody else's. And because I basically went functionally from my 1,500 email list that I got initially to now I'm working off of somebody else's email list. And it wasn't even just as an affiliate. I was using his email list to market his courses, but they were on my platform. And particularly when I started putting some more lead magnet-y sort of things in his content to his audience, they would opt into his lead magnet. But since the lead magnet was hosted on my Teachable School, that got them opted into my world. And so I went, $5,000 was what I generated in the first year. And in 2000, we generated over 100,000. And it was without really my own audience, without me spending on ads, and so that just got me thinking like, how do I do this again?
Yeah.
How do I just keep on doing this? And so that became a lot of my guiding principles for the next few years.
And so how have you kept on doing that? So you had that, you've got his email list, you've got his courses. How did you take that any further? I
would have liked to have been easier. And I figured out more of how to do it. The problem is that he was a unique sort of person, that he was somebody that had in my industry that had a pretty extensive, he was savvy about building an email list. He understood lead magnets. He understood kind of that whole process, but he wasn't interested in running it himself. And that was kind of this weird mixture. Either there were people that, because there were a lot of people in my field that had content, and I would get reach out all the time to be like, oh, I've got this great course idea. I'm like, but I would come down to like, okay, but how are we going to sell it? And do you have an email list? Well, no. Okay. So it that affected things. But and so most people that had the capacity to sell the courses, that had the way to communicate with their audiences, were kind of doing it for themselves. So it was more of just trying to find angles. And so what I began thinking about, because I made the deliberate choice of not like, okay, I don't want to do the social media stuff. And I had taught marketing for people at that point, building up psychotherapy practices of how to. And so I already had kind of my marketing philosophy. And one of the things is the best thing I find for marketing is consistency. Decide what you're doing and just do it consistently. And when I would discover things that I wasn't able to do consistently, it's like, I probably shouldn't do it. I put up some initial like YouTube videos. I tried some things initially, but it's like, I'm not doing this consistently. So it's better just spend my energy doing something else. The other aspect of it, and this was just what I found from my audience. I still don't really equate much in the way of social media followings with anything that excites me for like an affiliate partner. I like emails. I like email lists. I like open rates. Those are kind of the analytics I look at. Because I've seen people that, they'll have 500,000 subs on YouTube, but I'll put something as an affiliate connection with them and nothing, they're no sales. And so it becomes these vanity metrics for some of it, at least economically. And so I was less interested in people in that, but I would look at, and one of the things I considered was, it took me a few years to get to this point, but it is one of my things I advise people to do now if you're trying to figure out an affiliate pathway. But this is what I did. Because I discovered this in the Facebook account I initially made to like join these groups. And I did that just because I wanted to create some delineated space between what limited personal things I did on Facebook and just not mix the two. But what I discovered was I began looking at the ads and I'm like, because I realized like I'm the avatar of my audience, or not exactly, but I'm close. And so what I got thinking about is like, okay, who's spending money to advertise to someone like me? So, one of the things I do now is I started a completely fake Instagram account, and it's not even pretending to be me. It's pretending to be a white female in her early 50s who's a mental health therapist, because that's the most common description of someone in my field. I created my avatar and I began following the accounts and liking things and interacting through this account and I wanted to see who was pushing content to me. And what that told me was like, here's somebody who's spending money to try to connect with this audience. What is it just to kind of draft behind them, to kind of follow behind them? Because they're already spending the money. I'm not telling them to spend money. They're already doing it. And I might have offers that aren't direct competitors to them, because a lot of the people that were really pushing into this had business opportunity offers. In my field, the most common ones are develop a cash-based private practice, get out of the insurance business so you can make more per hour, start a group therapy practice so other people work for you, or create an online offer of a course, a membership. That's what everyone was doing. And there were lots of my offers that weren't in direct competition to that, but that their audience would also be interested in. And so I would pitch it to them as, you're already spending money to get this attention and you can only monetize it so far. Would you let me help you make money at it? And that's kind of been my method since then.
And how many, when you'd reach out to people like that, how many of them would say, yes, that sounds great? And how many would say, just ignore your message? Or like, what kind of response rates do you get?
I get a response usually always, but it's a principle of mine. Like I very much resist kind of any passive aggressive ways of dealing with things. Like I'm in the American South. We're the closest thing in America to British in that. Like I've had several close British friends and I've had to learn how to translate things. Like I would have friends that would say, we go see a movie and what did you think of the film? They're like, oh, it was quite good. Well, I didn't know that quite good meant bad until like, like that, like as an English person, you know what that means. It means like, yeah, I don't want to complain. I don't want to be like, you're kind of reading between the lines. So for therapists, one is I understand my avatar, and we're typically kind of scattered and flaky, and a lot of times not responding to a message isn't because I don't want to talk to you. Sometimes it's just I missed it. So I squeak the wheel. And if it is that, basically, I'm not going to take a hint on purpose. If you want to tell me to F off, you can tell me to F off. But until you tell me something, now how much energy I'm going to put to keep on reaching out to somebody has to do with like how much I want to connect with them. but I just find persistence sticks. And so I can't think of too many instances where somebody I really wanted to connect with that I wasn't able to do it in the end. Even if it's connect with them, they say no. I mean, I'll get no's, but sometimes it's just like the person, it doesn't feel congruent with what they're thinking about. Sometimes they have a pretty conservative mindset. They don't understand affiliate stuff and it just feels, and I don't spend a lot of time like because I've had some affiliates that I've really tried to get on board and there's so much work and I quit doing that because they have to be in the right place, but just move on to the next one. So I find though, the longer I do this, the more I'm appealing to affiliates. And there's certain principles I think of. I always think in the reach out, it's not like, here's what you can do for me. It is, here's how I genuinely like to help you. I'm in an industry that's very weird about money. That's very weird about any economic sort of stuff. And like Pat Flynn's voice, I really like for this. He's got a great tone that I've really tried to follow of just, think of selling a service. So I always kind of lean into that genuinely because I want to think through like, how am I offering them something beneficial? And to the example, if I'm identify that somebody's spending money on ads for a product that's to my audience, but not what I'm offering, I want to offer them a really easy way for them to monetize the audience they're already building beyond what they're doing. And my goal from a first affiliate thing is that it's easy for them. It's a positive experience because I want affiliate partners to be excited to hear from me and my team because we made it so easy for them to make money without having to do that much. The longer I do that, the more I have a reputation for that. And so then it's easier to get people to respond. And I'm also very much willing, if it fits with my audience, to reciprocate as an affiliate for them. And at this point, as my audience keeps on getting bigger, I'm much more appealing to them in that way.
So what kind of things were people selling that wasn't in competition with what you're offering? What kind of providers were you finding were good affiliates for you?
There were two categories of people. One were other people offering continuing education. And they're an easy group to find because there's a few national credentialers for that. And they have directory lists. And so I just scrub those lists. And we'll do assessments of them for affiliate partnership. And automation tools and AI has made this a lot easier to do this analysis. I'm looking at, I'll take a website, and the first thing I'll do is I'll pull up on builtwith.com because I want to see what's in it. Because if they're using like a Yahoo site builder from 1999, they're how savvy they're going to be to connect with me is going to be difficult. But if I see like they've got Facebook Pixels installed, or I see that they're using one of the main LMS platforms of Teachable, Kajabi, Thinkific, if I see that they've got, ClickFunnels, whatever it is, will tell me like how much they're kind of marketing business minded. So I'll have to do less educating for them. And there's that. And there's also like, what's their price point? Ideally, my ideal person is somebody who's priced above where I am because their audience is used to paying stuff. But for the people that are doing the really inexpensive, I don't try for them as affiliate partner because they're people that will do things like there's a company called CEs for Less, and it's like for $3 you can have unlimited CEs for a year, and it's just it's not my audience. I'm not trying to sell it. Like that's somebody has to renew their license and they realize they need their credits, and it's like, and they get online and what's, cheap, easy, but it's not very good content. It's not very and so I exclude them. So I basically find people that have like a marketing forward mindset based on what I can see their tools are and their price point is comparable. And CEs are one of those things that you have to keep on doing them. Like you have to do the average in the US is about 20 hours a year. And so you have to just having more content is helpful. If it's a different subject, if it's a different course, because they only have so many courses if they're quality courses. And so, but their audience keeps on needing different ones because you can't keep on taking the same one and get credit. So there's that audience. I like more people that have the business development opportunities. Those are the ones that are, and in my audience, I've identified those kind of three offers. And one of my main business development offers, it's called Profitable Mental Health Trainings. And I got into this because people would ask me after being in the CE business, how do you do this? And so you get a question a lot, it makes sense for a course. So so I put together a course, and initially it was just a course of teaching people how to do CEs. It's basically a B2B offer, like I'm creating as a professional psychotherapist, I'm creating things for other psychotherapists. But I had a lot of people taking the course that were just interested in how to create more psychoeducational things for the general public. And so I redid the course over the years because I've done some of that. It's been less of my business focus, but it's a different way of thinking things. So I basically expanded the course, and it's like I teach people how like an in-person method and online methods. And I teach people how to kind of create either a B2B trainings for other therapists or a B2C kind of enrichment, wellness of things. And that overlaps with depending on the offer. So if you have a course about how to build a psychotherapy practice, how to start a group psychotherapy practice, my offer is not your offer, but your audience, usually the person interested in the offer of how to start a group psychotherapy practice is an entrepreneurial, business-minded psychotherapist who's often going to be interested in multiple entrepreneurial opportunities. So that's how I kind of pitch it to them. But even somebody who's got a close offer, because there are a decent amount of people that are teaching like how to create an online membership. And that is kind of a piece of that course. But I'm the only person that I've been able to find that teaches how to do CEs as a business. And I mean, I've had people in other professions take my course because they've said like physicians or attorneys take my course because they want to figure out how to do that for those professions and they haven't found anything there. And I'm the closest thing.
Mm.
So I just kind of angle it in that way and of just like, hey, I know you have this offer on this. Here's how mine is different. And if there's any hesitancy, like I'll offer to promote their thing too. And I never want anyone to feel used. I don't want people to feel like I hoodwinked them. I want them, whatever it looks like, I want them to either feel really happy about how it went, or even if like a joint venture doesn't go well, in the sense of like we don't have sales or things like that. I want them to at least feel that I was transparent. Or, I had one person, she was a friend who smallest podcast audience. I did an affiliate launch with her and we ended up having multiple sales in it, but none of them came from her. Because I did one email to my audience and none of them came from her. And I just said, hey, I appreciate you. We did a joint webinar together. I like those as a lead magnet because I have my affiliate partners go to the webinar and they have the benefit where they're just sending their list to a valuable free thing. And then I do the direct mailing to them after the webinar. But that allows me to get more people on my list but it keeps them from having to sell directly. And anyway, she went through the process with me and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry I didn't, we had some sales, but none of them came through you. I'd like to send you $300 on PayPal. And it's just more of like, I appreciate your effort in it. And for me, I'd made sales in that launch. It felt totally worth it for that. I wanted her to feel good about that she did it with me.
So how many affiliates will you work with a year at the moment?
Not as many as I'd like.
No? Okay.
I mean, as I said, John, like I have been bootstrapping this for a super long time. When I had an in-person seminar business, it was my wife and I, and that was what it was. And then started putting things online. It was mostly me, and I would listen to any number of people, you and kind of like, and everyone like you need to get the support. And some of it is my ADHD made it difficult to explain things because it would be quicker for me to do it at times than it would to sit down to try to explain it. I remember interviewing some VAs and they're like, well, what are your SOPs? I'm like, I don't have any. That's part of and I wasn't going after the level of people that could do it. And I tried some VAs, but honestly, I just felt I was fixing things. It took me more work. And so it was really difficult for me to get there. And only in this last year have I finally like started to get more consistent support. But that affects like, I can be pretty harem scarum where I'm putting together, the last bits of my webinar minutes before going live. Now, I don't like doing it that way, but it tends to happen more often than I like. So the planning ahead becomes difficult. But what I appreciate now is I've been doing it long enough that I have developed more systems. And where automations and AIs are really kind of super helped me is that my ideal sort of workforce is a lot of agentic agents that I'm building on my knowledge and with human support in that. But like, I'm just now where I'm setting my calendar. I'm good at batching, setting my calendar of like, okay, what's going to be our affiliate calendar for the year, and set an agent for that has email capability and like is reaching out to people and versus what it would be for me is I would think about something and be like, oh, I should contact John. And then I might email you that day. I might forget. And so it's just, so how many I want to work with in a year, as many as I could treat well, as many as I could fit into my system. How it ends up being is it will be anywhere from like 12 to like 3 in a given year. So it's pretty inconsistent in different years of how much I do it.
And how does this all work out in terms of revenue? Like what's an average kind of month? And I guess that varies whether you're doing an affiliate deal that month or not, right?
Again, it depends on audience. Like my biggest affiliates I've worked with are people with like 100,000 plus email lists. And I'll work with people even that 3,000 or something like that. It just depends. Like I don't, if they've got an engaged audience that very clearly aligns with my avatar, then I'll want to do that. And so it will be, we've had affiliates do anywhere from like $40,000 down. And I think it just really depends on what sort of audience they have, how warm it is really. The people with the warmest audiences that are clearly the most aligned, of course, have the best response. But I do for my standard affiliate rate will be 30%. But for somebody who I'm pretty interested in, I'll do 50 because I want to give it part of it since I have multiple products in that I put out. I don't want to, be, penny wise and pound foolish because I'm happy to give half of my revenue for even what's a large course because if that gets that person in my ecosystem and they stay a long time. And I've had pretty good retention throughout. My churn's pretty low in my email list. I've had a lot of people that stick with me a long time. And so it's kind of the lifetime value is totally worth it to me. I want to be over generous with affiliates again, because I want them to be excited that someone is reaching out to them from me.
Yeah. And you also then promote other people's courses as well. Is that those affiliates, the same ones you're doing the promotion with, or is it a separate thing where you're promoting other people's courses?
It typically ends up being the same, just because the people that have promotions I like are typically the people who I think I always want to put stuff in front of my audience that feels correct, that feels like it makes sense. I mean, I'm not going to start putting out like Harry's razors sorts of things. Like it just, I mean, though my audience shaves, I guess it's just more of like, I part of the bar I'm trying to go above is that a lot of the knowledge content for professional development in my industry is either just not very high quality, it's kind of old, or just not very innovative. And there are a handful of people that are basically doing the Lambro sort of thing. It feels super salesy, and a lot of my audience doesn't like that. So I always want them, I get really high email rate opens. It's the thing I'm kind of most proud of in my metrics. And part of it is I want people to be excited to get an email from me. And I want it because they feel it's going to be something helpful, something that maybe a free thing of value, or at the very least, something that feels like, yeah, I may not be ready to buy this, but it totally makes sense. I'm totally glad to know that you're telling me about it. So that's how I think about affiliate offers. Like there's one I'm looking at right now with a colleague who, she's not a psychotherapist, but she's an accountant that specializes in bookkeeping and accounting for psychotherapy practices. And she wrote a book with Mike Michalowicz on like a version of Profit First for therapists.
Okay.
And so she has like a course on that. So that's not an offer in my ecosystem, but it totally aligns with my audience. And so we're talking about doing a webinar together where I can, but usually if I'm interested in putting somebody in front of my audience, I'm usually going to be interested in being put in front of theirs, unless they're really early in the process. But even then, I'll give them like an automated thing. I may not do a live webinar, but I'll give them something.
And what's some of the challenges for you with like your email marketing or your funnels? What's any of the steps that doesn't work as well as you'd like?
I'm still haven't gotten evergreen down. I tried it for the first time last year and I built too complicated of a funnel. And I know that's one of your, like, it is one of the things I appreciate that as a consistent thing I hear from you, John, both on your podcast and also when I hear you guest on others, is people like John was asking me like where I first started listening to the podcast, the Art of Selling Online courses. I'm not sure, but I've been a long-term fan of Jacques Hopkins' online course show. I think it was just an Apple suggestion kind of from that. But, Jacques very much an engineer kind of mindset. He loves kind of the fine tuning of things. And I remember you were guesting on his show and Jacques was asking you a question about like segmentation. Like, well, how do you exclude to make sure that people aren't also being offered this offer in the evergreen sequence as well as this one at the same time? And you're like, yeah, I just don't worry about it that much. And so you're that voice in my head at times when I'm building too complicated of a mousetrap. And it's just like, if you build it too tight, and because I know one of your things too is that stuff breaks. And if the funnel's too long, finding where it breaks is harder and stuff will always break. And I've gotten 3 emails today because I've been on ConvertKit for my CRM for years, but I got to the point where I was paying like, almost $300 a month. And so I switched to go high level, which I pay like $90 a month and they don't cap me and kind of all that. But the problem is I had a lot of lead magnets set up through that. And so I'm getting emails like, I filled out this form and nothing happened. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's another form we've got to replace for that. And I'm just thinking like, if I had too many long funnels, that'd be the process. So I've not done as many because I make it too complicated in my mind. They don't convert like my live things convert. And launches are hard. I'd like to do fewer of them. They're inconsistent. And I do find like it's like a lot of people, it's getting less and less productive over time. My affiliate relationships, I do think kind of bring in new blood pretty consistently, but it's just a lot of work. And but yeah, I've not come anywhere close to my live conversions when I'm doing a live launch versus evergreen. And I'll think about different things and I'll just get overwhelmed because as I've heard you kind of walk through process of building a self-liquidated offer, and like I'll often listen to podcasts like I'm out exercising, and I'll start early, like, okay, yeah. And by the end, as my body's getting tired, my brain's getting tired, I'm like, oh gosh, that sounds like so much. Now, I've come to accept it's not really, and it's more of a mental thing for me. But honestly, it's getting out of my own way is one of the biggest things. Like there's so many things that I've done that I've taken a while to do, and I'll do them, and it works much better than I thought. And my response to myself is, yeah, you could have been doing this a while ago. That and just figuring out consistent systems. Have been a bootstrapper that's pretty ADHD, who has other jobs, who sees lots of shiny objects. It's I produce a lot, but there's a lot of holes in the colander. Like there's a lot of water that comes in, a lot of it comes out. Just enough comes in that stuff works. But I haven't always been a workaholic, but being an online course creator has turned me into one. And as a therapist, I'd like to work on that.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I know that you've got something that you could point people to if they want to go and check out some more of your wisdom.
Yes, it was. I need to double check the link. I think it was Maven creativelabs.com. So I got thinking about what to share because a lot of what I do is very industry specific, and there may be people in my industry that are there. And I think too, if anyone's in something like professional qualification related, there are people that could be doing continuing education in their field, but don't, just it's not what they're thinking through. But if you are doing anything that's tied to a professional qualification, accounting, law, nursing, like any number of things, education, that is a nice add-on to do. And it adds a little bit more. One of the reasons I've been able to host other course creators and the reason they want to do it with me versus just doing it on their own is because I'm credentialed in that space. And that's something that they just can't do automatically. So that's allowed me to build up kind of more of a collaborative process because I have something. I like there being a certain barrier to entry. I don't want it to be too high, but if it's just anybody can do it, then it's, you end up with a lot of noise. But as I've talked about being really disorganized with my process, where I've been excited is, like a lot of people, AI has been interesting to me, and I'm not a technical person. And so, but I've really appreciated that as I approach AI because I'm somebody who's constantly trying to figure out hacks in life. Because it's what led me to be a therapist. I had to figure out the workarounds as a kid because school was difficult, social things were difficult, and I just figured out ways around it. And so my brain constantly looks at how something can be solved in asymmetrical ways. And I've approached learning AI like that. And so I've really just, I haven't tried to treat it as like, here's a content creating machine because I just don't think it does a very good job at that. It's good at content, it's shaping. If you give it raw material, that's good, but it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know what you're talking about or don't know how to like sift through things and you just kind of let the AI go, you'll end up with something that everybody else can do. And it's not that interesting. And it sounds like AI when you read it. And the internet's full of blog posts right now that are AI generated off somebody else's YouTube videos. And that's super boring. But what I've been able to do is I'll take certain things in my creative process and I'll just kind of set it aside in a automation or in an AI agent. And because it keeps a calendar much better than I do. And so if I can just, okay, you need to be the person that's organizing or the agent that's organizing the affiliate calendar. You need to send out the email reminders. You need to do even cold outreach. And so I've just been building this stuff, and I've been doing a lot in Taskade, which is that's a fun. It's an organizational app, but they've created like out of the box agentic agents, and you can build your own. And they have a lot of kind of natural integrations with a lot of different tools, a lot of Google Workspace stuff. And so if you get an integration with Google Workspace, you can hack a lot of things. I've learned that because people have tried to take me off of using certain automation tools like, oh, this doesn't exactly, integrate this way. You can't do this with Zapier this way. I'm like, well, can this thing send an API update to a Google Sheet? Well, yeah. Well, can the Google Sheet trigger the thing in Zapier? Yeah. Okay, it works. But Taskade, you can sign up for them for free and they'll let you build a agent for free. And I can share agents I built. So that I just wanted to create a place where I can start just sharing ideas with people because of I might monetize it one day, but I'm not right now. And for me, it's just the idea of like, when I find something that's really helpful for me, I get super excited. And, people that know me, I share a lot of podcasts in that. Like I've recommended this podcast to a lot of people just because when I find something like this is super helpful. But even like my methods of how I'm using AI, like I haven't built it yet, John, but when I subscribe to someone's newsletter, I haven't built yours. What I'll do is I have an app script in Google that will, anytime an email comes in, it gets tagged and the content of the email goes into a Google sheet that then feeds the knowledge base of a custom GPT. There are all these Substacks I've subscribed to that I don't have time to read, but I just feed the information into this and create a bot off of it. And I can ask the bot things. And I want to have reference for the email. Like I've done this for like Rick Mulready now for years because and so I'll ask, like, has Rick said anything about this topic? I'll be like, yes. And then it can reference, since it's all in a Google sheet, it can reference the date of the email and I can go in my folders and find it. But that's just like, okay, that saves me so much time because I'll spend so much time scouring podcast episodes because I'll remember John said something once to somebody. When was that? And just like, I think it was maybe, and so I'll kind of reconstruct it in my mind and spend all this time trying to find the thing and just cutting that out of my day is a huge time saver. So that excites me.
So if people go to mavencreativelabs.com, they'll be able
I'm
to...
pretty sure that is it. I'm looking
That's
at
the link you gave me.
Okay, then yes. Whatever I gave you, then yes.
And when they get there, they'll be able to access some of these.
Yeah, we'll have some. Yeah, they'll be. We'll have just. And again, it's nothing charged in this. At least, well, and as of 2025, nothing is charged. If you end up going to that link some point in 2026, it it may cost a lot, but
who knows?
As of right now, in this year, it's just where for other people in the creative space where I found time savers and excites me. I like sharing. I'll give access to either custom GPT. I'm doing some just custom GPTs that I've made, just put out, and links to those, and then also for different agentic bots on free plans for different tools I'm using.
Nice, beautiful. Okay, so mavencreativelabs.com. Wonderful. Well, David, thanks so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, John.
And for everyone listening, before we wrap it up, I want to remind you of how much your support means to us. We're here to make your podcast experience even better, and you can help us with just a quick favor. If you rate and review the podcast, you're going to give us priceless feedback that's going to help shape future episodes. Please go to ratethispodcast.com/online courses. Nothing would be happier than for me to hear how the show has helped you. So either go and leave a review or just leave a 5-star rating. If you don't like it that much, I can't believe you've made it all the way through this far in the episode. We've done over 100 episodes of the show. I'd love to know which was your favorite, what guests you enjoyed the most, what you'd love to hear from, who else you want to hear on the show. So make my day and leave it with a 5-star review and a rating if you can as well. So thanks so much for listening as always, and we will see you next time.